Studies Section 7, Metaphysics of Baron von Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. Introduction. Leibniz's philosophical task is the rationalist project, which can best be understood in the light of his career as a diplomat. The diplomat must reconcile divergent points of view and merge them into a harmonious, unified compact. Similarly, in his philosophy, Leibniz attempts to use the principles of mathematics and theology to work out his vision of a universal cosmic harmony. In doing so, he hopes to reconcile science and religion, mechanism and theology, modern and ancient philosophy. He does not think this has yet been accomplished, for the complaints that our human knowledge of nature seems to be at present like a shock, well provided with all kinds of wares without any order or inventory. In this study session, you will be expected to acquire and articulate the analysis of Leibniz's contribution to unity and harmony in reality. You will be introduced into the pluralist principle of Leibniz monadology. Learning outcomes for study section 7. When you have studied this section, you should be able to discuss the analysis of Leibniz's contribution to unity and harmony in reality, explain the pluralist principle of Leibniz monadology. The metaphysics of Leibniz. Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, 1646 to 1716, a German, was not just a philosopher and mathematician, but an outstanding metaphysician. The fundamental claims of his metaphysics can be traced to his rejection of Spinoza's metaphysical speculations, especially Spinoza's identification of God with nature, and argues instead that God must be an agent, that is, that God must have a free will. He also denies that individual persons are mere molds or aspects of Spinoza's one substance, what he calls God or nature. Third, he disagrees with Spinoza's claim that the individual does not survive death, and last, he finds that Spinoza is wrong to argue that happiness consists of an acquiescence of the inevitable. Leibniz's question concerning why is there anything at all seems to be the biggest metaphysical question ever asked in the history of philosophy. This question is not only difficult to answer but poses difficulties in its very conception. After all, it is or should be clear that such questions as why is there anything at all, and why are things in general as they actually are, and why are the laws of nature as they are, cannot be answered within the standard causal framework. Leibniz's metaphysics, however, is built around the philosophy of monadology, wherein everything in the world is a windowless monad. This includes humans, and in our relations and interactions, though apparently direct and one-on-one, is actually indirect, interacting with one another through the monadom or supreme monad. In this vein, Leibniz gives a number of arguments for the argument of supreme monad or God. In Leibniz's view, the universe, that is, all of reality, consists of an indefinite number of monads, or soul-like substances dominated by one supreme monad, God. He agrees with Descartes that I myself and other spirits or souls exist, but he wonders how the spiritual, the only sort of reality, or do ultimately non-spiritual realities also exist? The problem from which Leibniz starts reduces itself therefore to this: are figure and motion ultimately real? This question he answers in the negative. Every extension is, in the first place, he points out, infinitely divisible. There is no surface so small that it is not abstractly possible to break it up in conception into smaller surfaces. But endlessness, Leibniz holds, is an irrational conception. Therefore, that which is by nature endlessly divisible cannot be an ultimate reality. It is impossible, he says, to find the principles of a true unity in matter alone, since matter is only a collection or mass of parts to infinity. For as he elsewhere says, a continuum is not only divisible to infinity, but every particle of matter is actually divided into other parts different among themselves. And since this could always be continued, you should never reach anything of which you could say here is a real being. In other words, since by ultimate is meant a further irreducible reality, that which is endlessly divisible cannot be ultimate. It is even more obvious that motion is not an ultimate, a self-dependent and sort of reality. Motion, Leibniz says, if you regard only its exact and formal meaning, that is, change of place, is not something entirely real, and when several bodies change their places reciprocally, it is not possible to determine by considering the bodies alone to which among them movement or repose is to be attributed. Evidently, that which is always relative to something else is not ultimately real. Leibniz believed in a perfectly good supreme being who created and maintained the world and whose existence could be proven. He argues for God a posteriori based on the harmonized diversity of the world and the fact that there are contingent beings whose final or sufficient reason must be in a necessary being. Like many of his contemporaries, Leibniz owed a number of his assumptions about God as creator of the world to an ancient, mostly Platonist tradition. For Leibniz, there is an ultimately good, perfectly self-sufficient, and thoroughly unified supreme being on which everything else depends and which itself depends on nothing. God's mind contains a number of ideas or attributes which the perfect essences are of and which are used as model for created things. The idea or attribute of God is emanated to a creature in such a way that neither God nor God's attribute is depleted in any way, while the creature acquires the attribute, though in an inferior manner. The emanative process is continual, so that a creature instantiates a divine attribute if and only if God emanates the attribute to the creature. For Leibniz, it is evident that created substances depend upon God, who preserves them and who even produces them continually by a kind of emanation. Leibniz's universe contains only God and non-composite, immaterial, soul-like entities called monads. He argues that things seem to cause one another because God ordained a pre-established harmony among everything in the universe. On what did Leibniz agrees with Descartes? He agrees with Descartes that I, myself, and other spirits or souls exist. Pluralist principle of Leibniz monadology. According to Leibniz, the natural world is that it is composed of substances, each of which has its own source of activity by means of which it is constituted as a self-sufficient, unified thing. Leibniz famously began to use the word monad as his name for substance. Monad means that which is one, has no part, and is therefore indivisible. These are the fundamental existing things according to Leibniz. His theory of monads is meant to be a superior alternative to the theory of atoms that was becoming popular in natural philosophy at the time. Leibniz has many reasons for distinguishing monads from atoms. The easiest to understand is perhaps that while atoms are meant to be the smallest unit of extension out of which all larger extended things are built, monads are non-extended. Complete concept. A substance that is monad is that reality which the complete concept represents. A complete concept contains within itself all the predicates of the subject of which it is the concept, and these predicates are related by sufficient reasons into a vast single network of explanation. So, relatedly, the monad must not only exhibit properties but contain within itself virtually or potentially all the properties it will exhibit in the future, as well as contain the trace of all the properties it did exhibit in the past. Leibniz later opined that the monad is pregnant with the future and laden with the past. All these properties are folded up within the monad. They unfold when they have sufficient reason to do so. Furthermore, the network of explanation is indivisible. To divide it would either leave some predicates without a sufficient reason or merely separate two substances that never belonged together in the first place. Correspondingly, the monad is one, simple and indivisible. If, however, Leibniz's metaphysically necessary being is not a logically necessary being, but speaking metaphorically, the supreme brute fact, then his principle boils down to the simple claim that there is a terminus to explanation, that everything which has a full explanation has an ultimate or at least a complete explanation. Whether it is rational to suppose that phenomena have complete explanations is a matter of whether you have potential explanations for them of great simplicity and explanatory power. Leibniz claims that the universe is not metaphysically necessary, and so that its existence needs explanation. He may be right, but I cannot see how you can argue for this claim except in terms of this relatively greater simplicity and explanatory power of a potential explainance. Leibniz does not provide such an argument. It is up to us to see the force of an argument along these lines for the existence of God. What is a monad? Monad means that which is one, has no part, and is therefore indivisible. Summary of Studies Section 7. In Studies Section 7, you have learned that 1. There is a nature of reality in the metaphysics of Leibniz. To be sure, Leibniz is of the rationalist school of thought who postulated the thesis known as monadology, wherein there is supreme monad through whom all other existences that are windowless monad relates. 2. In the metaphysics of Leibniz, with the monistic tradition, although he spoke of the existence of all other things in the world, including humans, as windowless monads relating with one another via the monadom, or the supreme monad. This is the end of Studies Section 7. Thanks for listening.